In an unforgettable story of hope and resilience, a young boy sets up a lemonade stand to save his mother's life, only to have his world turned upside down when Donald Trump himself steps in. Before we reveal the incredible twist that shocked everyone, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss inspiring stories like this. And if you enjoy this video, be sure to share it with a friend who could use a little inspiration today. Jamal was a 12-year-old boy with big dreams and a heart even bigger than his dreams. He lived with his mom, Grace, in a small, rundown house on the edge of town. Though they didn't have much, Jamal never felt poor. His mother's love was more than enough for him. Grace worked long hours at the local diner, always smiling, always cheerful, despite the struggles she faced. But lately things had changed. Grace had grown weaker, her smile had faded, and she was no longer able to work. Jamal had heard her late-night coughing fits and had seen the way she held her chest in pain, and it terrified him. One day, when she fainted in the kitchen, Jamal called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor told him something he could barely comprehend. His mom needed urgent surgery, or she wouldn't survive. The cost of the operation was staggering, thousands of dollars. Jamal knew they didn't have that kind of money, and the thought of losing his mom was unbearable. Sitting in their tiny living room that evening, Jamal felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. He stared at a picture of his family from better days, his dad smiling, his mom laughing, and himself as a toddler, carefree and happy. His dad had passed away years ago, and now the idea of losing his mom too was more than he could handle. "I can't let that happen," he whispered to himself. Jamal wasn't sure what to do, but he knew he couldn't just sit around and wait for a miracle. He needed to take action. The question was, how? The weight of responsibility felt crushing for a 12-year-old, but Jamal's love for his mom gave him the determination to find a way, no matter how impossible it seemed. The next day, as Jamal walked home from school, he passed a group of kids selling lemonade on the corner. They were raising money for their soccer team, and cars were stopping one after another to buy from them. Jamal stopped and watched for a moment, and an idea began to form in his mind. What if he sold lemonade to raise money for his mom's surgery? It sounded crazy, but it was the only idea he had. He didn't have much experience with business, but he did know how to make lemonade. His mom had taught him when he was little. He remembered her saying, "A little sweetness can brighten even the sourest of days." That night, Jamal sat down with an old notebook and started making a plan. He wrote down everything he'd need: lemons, sugar, water, cups, and a sign to grab people's attention. But one problem loomed large. He didn't have a single dollar to buy supplies. Determined not to give up, Jamal decided to ask for help. He thought of Mrs. Robinson, their kind elderly neighbor who lived 2 doors down. She was always baking cookies for the neighborhood kids and had a soft spot for Jamal. When he knocked on her door and explained his plan, her eyes filled with tears. "Your mom is a wonderful woman," she said, her voice trembling, "and you're a wonderful son for wanting to help her." Mrs. Robinson gave Jamal a few crumpled bills from her purse and even offered him a small folding table to use for his stand. "It's not much, but I hope it helps," she said with a warm smile. Jamal thanked her with all his heart, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in days. Early the next morning, Jamal got to work. He borrowed a wagon to carry the supplies he bought with Mrs. Robinson's money. He carefully set up his stand on the busiest corner in the neighborhood, placing the table, the sign, and his pitcher of lemonade with pride. The sign read, "Lemonade for Mom's surgery, $1 a cup. Help save a life." It was simple but heartfelt, and Jamal hoped it would catch people's attention. As the first rays of sunlight hit the street, Jamal stood behind his table, ready to face the day. He didn't know if it would work, but deep down, he believed in his mission. He wasn't just selling lemonade. He was fighting for his mom's life. At first, the morning was slow. A few people walked by, glancing at his sign but continuing on their way. Jamal began to feel discouraged. Was this a mistake? Just as doubt started creeping in, an elderly man in a suit stopped at the stand. "What's this about?" he asked, pointing to the sign. Jamal explained his story, his voice trembling with emotion. The man nodded, reached into his wallet, and handed Jamal a $20 bill. "Keep the change, kid. You're doing something amazing." That single act of kindness sparked a chain reaction. More and more people stopped to buy lemonade, some giving extra money, others spreading the word to friends and family. By the afternoon, Jamal's stand had become the talk of the neighborhood. Cars lined up to support him, and even local news reporters showed up to interview him. Jamal was nervous in front of the camera, but he spoke from the heart, sharing his love for his mom and his determination to save her. "She's my hero," he said, tears in his eyes. "I just want to make sure she's okay." The story spread quickly, and soon, people from other parts of town came to buy lemonade and donate money. Just when Jamal thought the day couldn't get any more eventful, a sleek black limousine pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the door, and to Jamal's shock, out stepped Donald Trump. Jamal couldn't believe his eyes. The former president had heard about Jamal's story on the news and decided to stop by. Trump approached the stand with a smile, shook Jamal's hand, and said, "You're doing something incredible here, young man. Your determination is inspiring." He handed Jamal a thick envelope and said, "This is for your mom. You don't have to worry anymore." Jamal opened the envelope and gasped. It was a check for the full cost of the surgery. Tears streamed down Jamal's face as he thanked Mr. Trump, the crowd around them cheering and clapping. Jamal couldn't believe how his small act of hope and determination had turned into something so much bigger. That night, as he sat by his mom's hospital bed, holding her hand, he told her everything that had happened. Grace smiled weakly, tears in her eyes, and said, "I'm so proud of you, Jamal. You've shown me what true love looks like." And in that moment, Jamal knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they could face them together. The next day began with a mixture of hope and anxiety for Jamal. He woke up early, determined to make his lemonade stand a success. As he looked out of the small kitchen window, he saw the morning sun creeping over the rooftops, casting golden light on the neighborhood. Today, he thought, is the day I make a difference. He grabbed the supplies Mrs. Robinson had helped him buy, lemons, sugar, cups, and a pitcher, and loaded them onto a small wagon he'd borrowed from another neighbor. With a hand-painted sign reading, "Lemonade for Mom's Surgery, $1 a cup," he made his way to the busiest corner in the neighborhood. The spot was perfect, right by the main street where cars passed frequently and people walked on their way to work or errands. Jamal carefully set up the stand, arranging everything neatly. He made sure the sign was visible, propped up against the table with bold, colorful letters. The whole time, he felt a nervous flutter in his chest. What if no one stopped? What if people just walked past, ignoring him? But then he reminded himself of his purpose. This wasn't just about selling lemonade. This was about saving his mom. As the first hour passed, the street began to buzz with activity. People glanced at Jamal as they walked by, some smiling but continuing on their way. Jamal stood tall, offering a polite, "Good morning" to everyone who passed, his voice cheerful but tinged with uncertainty. A few people stopped to look at the sign, their eyes softening as they read the heartfelt message. One woman, dressed in a smart business suit, approached the stand and said, "What's this about, young man?" Jamal explained his story, his voice trembling with emotion as he told her about his mom's illness and the surgery she desperately needed. The woman listened carefully, her face full of compassion. "I'll take a cup of lemonade," she said, handing him a $5 bill. "Keep the change. Your mom is lucky to have you." That single act of kindness seemed to open the floodgates. As more people stopped to buy lemonade, Jamal began to feel a surge of hope. Some gave extra money, saying they admired his courage and determination. A young couple pushing a stroller bought 2 cups and donated $20, saying, "We saw you on the corner and couldn't just walk by. Good luck, kid." Jamal's heart swelled with gratitude as he poured cup after cup, each sale bringing him closer to his goal. As the morning turned to afternoon, Jamal's stand became the talk of the neighborhood. Word spread quickly, and soon, people were coming from nearby streets just to support him. A group of kids from Jamal's school stopped by, cheering him on and buying lemonade. "You're a legend, Jamal," one of them said, handing him a handful of coins they'd pooled together. Even the local mailman, who had been delivering letters in the area for years, stopped by and bought a cup. "This is the best lemonade I've ever had," he said with a wink, dropping a $10 bill into the jar. But it wasn't just the sales that made an impact. People began to share Jamal's story on social media, posting pictures of his stand and the sign that read, "Help Save a Life." Within hours, the story had gained traction, with dozens of comments and shares. "This boy is incredible," one post read. "Let's help him save his mom." The power of the internet started working in Jamal's favor, drawing even more people to his stand. Despite the growing crowd, Jamal never lost sight of his mission. He worked tirelessly, pouring lemonade, thanking customers, and sharing his story over and over. Each time he told it, his voice grew stronger, more confident. He realized that this was more than just a lemonade stand. It was a symbol of his love for his mom and his refusal to give up, no matter how tough things got. Just when Jamal thought the day couldn't get any busier, he noticed a man in a suit standing at the edge of the crowd, watching him intently. The man was tall, with a kind but serious expression, and he held a notepad in his hand. After a few minutes, the man approached Jamal and introduced himself as a reporter from the local news station. "We've heard about what you're doing here, and we'd love to share your story," he said. Jamal felt a surge of nervous excitement. He'd never been on TV before, but he knew this was a chance to reach even more people. The reporter set up a small camera and began asking Jamal questions about his mom, his mission, and what inspired him to start the lemonade stand. Jamal answered honestly, his voice steady and full of determination. "My mom is the strongest person I know," he said, looking directly into the camera. "She's always taken care of me, and now it's my turn to take care of her. I just want to make sure she gets the help she needs." The interview aired later that evening, and the response was overwhelming. Calls and messages flooded the news station from people who wanted to help. Donations started pouring in, some from complete strangers who had seen the story and were moved by Jamal's dedication. By the end of the day, Jamal's small lemonade stand had turned into a beacon of hope, inspiring not just his neighborhood, but people from all over the city. The sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the street, but Jamal's lemonade stand was still bustling with activity. The once quiet corner of the neighborhood had become a lively hub, with people lining up to support Jamal's cause. His hands were sticky from pouring countless cups of lemonade, and his voice was hoarse from telling his story, but he didn't mind. Every dollar, every kind word, every supportive smile reminded him why he was doing this. He couldn't let his mom down. Just as Jamal was about to take a short break to catch his breath, a commotion stirred at the end of the street. A shiny black limousine was slowly making its way toward the stand, its sleek exterior gleaming in the fading light. The crowd began to murmur, their attention shifting from Jamal's lemonade to the mysterious car. The vehicle came to a stop right in front of Jamal's stand, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Jamal felt his heart race as the driver stepped out and opened the passenger door. To everyone's shock, out stepped Donald Trump, dressed in a crisp suit and wearing his signature confident expression. Jamal blinked in disbelief. He'd seen Mr. Trump on TV and heard people talk about him, but he never imagined he'd see the former president standing at his lemonade stand. The crowd erupted into whispers, some pulling out their phones to record the moment. Trump approached the stand, his presence commanding attention. "So, you're the young man I've been hearing about," he said, his voice booming with authority, carrying a hint of warmth. "Tell me your story." Jamal, though nervous, stood tall and explained his mission once again, his voice steady despite the overwhelming moment. He told Trump about his mom, about her illness, and about his determination to raise enough money for her surgery. As he spoke, Trump listened intently, nodding occasionally and glancing at the sign that read, "Lemonade for Mom's Surgery, $1 a cup." When Jamal finished, there was a moment of silence. Then Trump smiled and said, "You're a remarkable young man. It takes guts and heart to do what you're doing, and I believe in rewarding hard work and determination." With that, Trump reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He handed it to Jamal and said, "This is for your mom. You don't have to worry about the surgery anymore." Jamal hesitated for a moment before taking the envelope, his hands trembling. When he opened it, his eyes widened in disbelief. It was a check for the full amount needed for his mom's operation. Tears streamed down his face as he looked up at Trump. "Thank you," Jamal managed to say, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't even know what to say." Trump placed a reassuring hand on Jamal's shoulder. "You've already said it, son. Actions speak louder than words, and you've proven that today." He turned to the crowd and addressed them. "This young man is an inspiration to all of us. He didn't wait for someone else to fix his problems. He took action. We can all learn something from his example." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing down the street. People approached Jamal to congratulate him, some hugging him, others shaking his hand. The local news reporter, who was still on the scene, captured every moment, broadcasting it live. The story quickly went viral, spreading across social media and news outlets. People from all over the country began sharing Jamal's story, praising his determination and the unexpected support from Trump. Donations continued pouring in, even though the surgery was now fully covered. Jamal decided to use the extra money to help other families in similar situations, setting up a small fund in his mom's name. As the crowd began to disperse, Jamal finally had a moment to breathe. He sat down on the curb, still clutching the envelope, and let out a long, shaky sigh. He couldn't believe how much had happened in a single day. What had started as a simple idea to save his mom had turned into something far bigger than he ever imagined. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the financial help, but for the overwhelming support from his community and beyond. When he returned home that evening, he found his mom sitting on the couch, looking tired but smiling. She'd heard about everything that happened from the neighbors who had been at the stand. Jamal sat next to her, showing her the check and telling her every detail of the day. Grace's eyes filled with tears as she listened, her hand clutching his. "You've always been my hero, Jamal," she said softly. "Today, you've shown me just how strong and brave you are." As Jamal hugged his mom, he realized that this wasn't just about the money or the surgery. It was about love, resilience, and the power of coming together as a community. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he and his mom would face them together, stronger than ever. The days following the incredible events at Jamal's lemonade stand were a whirlwind. The story had become a nationwide sensation, appearing on news channels, websites, and even late-night talk shows. Jamal's photo, standing proudly behind his lemonade stand with Donald Trump by his side, was plastered across social media. People from all walks of life were inspired by his determination and the heartwarming outcome of his efforts. For Jamal, however, the most important thing was that his mom would finally get the surgery she needed. On the morning of Grace's surgery, Jamal sat quietly in the hospital waiting room. The air felt heavy, and the ticking of the clock on the wall seemed louder than usual. Mrs. Robinson sat beside him, holding his hand for comfort. Other neighbors and supporters, many of whom Jamal barely knew before this, had shown up to offer their prayers and encouragement. Despite the overwhelming support, Jamal couldn't shake the knot of anxiety in his chest. What if something goes wrong, he thought, gripping the arms of his chair. But then he reminded himself of everything they'd accomplished together, the support of the community, the generosity of strangers, and his mom's unshakable strength. "She's going to be okay," he whispered to himself, taking a deep breath. After what felt like an eternity, the surgeon finally emerged, his face calm and reassuring. "The surgery was a success," he said, and a wave of relief washed over Jamal. Tears filled his eyes as he thanked the doctor, and the room erupted in applause and cheers. Mrs. Robinson hugged him tightly, her own eyes brimming with tears. "You did it, Jamal," she said softly. "You saved your mom." Later that afternoon, Jamal was allowed to visit his mom in her hospital room. She looked tired but peaceful, her face no longer marked by the pain that had haunted her for months. When she saw Jamal, her eyes lit up, and she reached out for his hand. "You're my little miracle," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jamal sat by her side, holding her hand and telling her about everything that had happened in the past few days. He described the crowds, the donations, and even the moment Donald Trump handed him the check. Grace listened intently, her smile growing wider with each detail. "I can't believe so many people care," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "You've shown me how much love there is in this world." While Grace recovered in the hospital, Jamal began to think about what he could do next. The outpouring of support had left him with a sense of responsibility. The extra donations that continued to come in after Trump's contribution had grown into a significant amount of money, far more than they needed for the surgery and medical bills. Jamal wanted to use that money to help others in need, just as so many people had helped him and his mom. He decided to create a fund in his mom's name, called the Grace Fund, to assist families facing medical emergencies. With the help of Mrs. Robinson and some of the neighbors, Jamal began planning how to distribute the funds and raise even more money. The first family they helped was a single father with a young daughter who needed a specialized treatment for a rare condition. When Jamal visited them to deliver the donation, he felt a deep sense of purpose. The father hugged him and said, "You're an angel, Jamal. What you've done for us, we'll never forget it." Jamal realized that this was just the beginning. His lemonade stand had started as a way to save his mom, but now it was growing into something much bigger. A way to spread hope and kindness to others. As the weeks went by, Jamal's story continued to inspire people across the country. He received letters from children who wanted to start their own lemonade stands to raise money for causes they cared about. Schools invited him to speak about his experience, and he even appeared on a popular morning talk show. Sitting on the couch across from the host, Jamal spoke confidently about his journey. "It wasn't just about the money," he said. "It was about showing my mom how much I love her, and proving that no matter how tough things get, there's always a way to make a difference." The Grace Fund quickly became a movement. Local businesses offered to sponsor events, schools organized charity drives, and volunteers signed up to help with fundraisers. Jamal's small neighborhood became a hub of activity, with people coming together to support the cause. For Jamal, it was overwhelming, but also incredibly fulfilling. He often thought back to the moment he stood on the corner with his first pitcher of lemonade, unsure if anyone would even stop. Now he was part of something much bigger than himself, a community united by love and compassion. One day, as Jamal was walking home from a meeting about the Grace Fund, he saw a group of kids setting up their own lemonade stand. Curious, he stopped to talk to them. "What's this for?" he asked, smiling. One of the kids, a boy about his age, replied, "We heard about what you did, and we wanted to help too. We're raising money for a local shelter." Jamal felt a swell of pride as he watched them work, their faces full of determination. "You're doing an amazing thing," he said, handing them a few dollars. "Keep it up." That evening, Jamal sat on his porch, reflecting on everything that had happened. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. He thought about his mom, now resting comfortably at home, and the countless people who had rallied around them in their time of need. Jamal realized that even though the journey had been difficult, it had taught him some of the most valuable lessons of his life. He learned that love, resilience, and community could overcome even the toughest challenges. And as he looked out at the quiet street, he smiled, knowing that the seeds of hope he'd planted had grown into something truly extraordinary. As weeks turned into months, Jamal's life began to settle into a new normal. His mom, Grace, was recovering well, her strength and energy returning little by little each day. It warmed Jamal's heart to see her smile again, the same radiant smile that had always been his source of comfort and love. She often sat on their porch, watching Jamal work on his plans for the Grace Fund, offering words of encouragement and ideas. "You've turned something small into something extraordinary," she said one evening, her voice filled with pride. "I always knew you were destined for great things." Jamal's efforts continued to grow, fueled by the community's support and his unwavering determination. The Grace Fund had become a beacon of hope for families in need, helping dozens of people who, like Jamal and his mom, had once felt trapped by their circumstances. Jamal worked tirelessly, balancing school and fund management with the help of Mrs. Robinson and other volunteers. Local businesses began partnering with the fund, donating supplies, offering venues for events, and even sponsoring charity drives. Each day brought new challenges, but Jamal faced them with the same resolve that had carried him through his lemonade stand's first day. One of the most memorable moments came during a fundraising gala organized by the Grace Fund. Held in the community center, The event was attended by hundreds of people, including many who had been directly helped by the fund. Jamal, dressed in his best clothes, stood nervously at the front of the room, preparing to give a speech. As he looked out at the crowd, he saw so many familiar faces, neighbors, friends, and strangers who had become like family. Taking a deep breath, he began. "When I started my lemonade stand, I didn't know if anyone would stop to help," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "But what I learned is that people care more than we realize. You all showed me that we can come together to make a difference, no matter how small it seems at first. This fund isn't just about my mom or me. It's about all of us. It's about love, kindness, and the belief that we're stronger when we stand together." The room erupted into applause, and Jamal felt a swell of pride and gratitude. After the speech, people approached him, sharing their stories and thanking him for his work. One woman holding a toddler in her arms said, "If it weren't for the Grace Fund, my daughter wouldn't have gotten the surgery she needed. You saved her life." Jamal smiled, tears in his eyes, and replied, "It's all thanks to the people who believed in what we could do together." Despite his growing responsibilities, Jamal never forgot where it all began. He still kept his original lemonade stand tucked away in the garage, the sign slightly faded but filled with memories of that life-changing day. On weekends, he occasionally set it up again, selling lemonade not for his mom this time, but for other causes. It became a symbol of hope for the neighborhood, drawing kids and families eager to support the fund and share in the joy of giving back. Each time Jamal poured a cup of lemonade, he was reminded of how far they had come. One summer afternoon, as Jamal sat on the porch with his mom, a sleek black limousine pulled up to their house. For a moment, Jamal was taken back to that unforgettable day when Donald Trump had visited his stand. But this time, it wasn't Trump who stepped out. It was a representative from a national foundation. They had heard about the Grace Fund and wanted to expand its reach, offering resources and support to help Jamal take his work nationwide. Jamal was stunned. He looked at his mom, who nodded with a knowing smile. "You've done amazing things here, Jamal," she said. "Now it's time to share that light with the world." The meeting marked the beginning of a new chapter. With the foundation's help, Jamal was able to establish branches of the Grace Fund in other cities, spreading the message of hope and resilience even further. He traveled to schools, community centers, and events, sharing his story and inspiring others to take action in their own communities. His message was simple but powerful. No matter how small you think your contribution is, it can make a world of difference to someone in need. Years later, as Jamal looked back on everything they had accomplished, he realized how much that single decision to start a lemonade stand had shaped his life. It had taught him the value of hard work, the power of community, and the importance of never giving up, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Most of all, it had shown him the profound impact one person could have when driven by love and determination. Sitting in his office one evening, surrounded by photos and thank you letters from families the Grace Fund had helped, Jamal felt a deep sense of fulfillment. His mom, now fully recovered, often joined him in his work, offering advice and sharing her wisdom. The lemonade stand had been the beginning, but the journey it sparked had become so much more. As the sun set outside, casting a warm glow across the room, Jamal thought about the countless lives they had touched and the future still ahead. He smiled, knowing that what had started as a boy's simple dream to save his mom had grown into a movement of love, hope, and change. And in his heart, he knew that the best was yet to come.